Central, option C, I stay in the same position I was a few minutes ago. If we fail, not we, if the state fails us in the direction that we are heading, and we need to move forward, and we take action on Lincoln Way Central, and the numbers do not put us over the top of that, a simple thought that I have, which might be skewed, but if the ISB approaches us, and we then have to go back in and open one school that we closed, and close 2 schools that we kept open, I think there would be mass chaos within this district. So with that, I am certainly stating clearly that I am opposed to Lincoln Way Central option C for that one reason only.
I disagree. I respectfully disagree. Thank you. Central, option C, Central, the least amount of students are just, we know these things, but I'm just going to say them. I think we've all gone over these. But clearly the least amount of students are displaced, only 26%. Central has we have a lot of life safety issues amongst all 4 buildings. However, almost nearly 50% of those improvements are here in this building. And this is a beautiful building. It is a 61-year-old building, but you would never know it. So I'm not trying to say anything negative to Central, but it has a lot of other needs that need maintenance. Closing this building, and I want to stress this, closing this building but to the point that Mr. Malloy made, Mr. Solomon made, getting the 3 schools open and getting us off of that wait list is going to be a challenge. It's not going to be easy. Closing Central also means that the district offices would remain here for a spell, and we would have to stay here, or at least for the next year, we know that for sure. But that's going to take away at some of the savings because it will be using utilities. So that's another factor. But I'm willing to take that risk. I'm willing to work harder at finding other ways to cut expenses. I'm willing to work harder to find ways to raise other revenue. We have to explore and research those over the next 12 months, if not sooner, to keep 2 state-of-the-art, beautiful, brand new buildings open. I can't in my right mind.
Christine, with the life safety and whatnot, are you suggesting that the kids are not safe in this school?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. We would never send kids to this school today if they weren't safe. Absolutely not. I'm talking about ongoing maintenance. All of our buildings, your own homes, we have ongoing maintenance. We all know this. So no, I'm not suggesting that they're not safe. Not at all.
Well, that's the only reason I do bring that up, Christine, is many of the emails are stating that we're putting children in an unsafe environment. So I just wanted to make sure you didn't feel that.
You know, I think we could call it a capital improvement project list, what Christine is referring to. And, you know, we're looking at some pretty hefty numbers moving forward in maintaining older buildings. That's something that we need to put into consideration. We're looking at a cost savings scenario. And why are we here? You know, why are we sitting here tonight? We're sitting here tonight because of the financial condition of the school district. That's why we're all here. Let's keep that in perspective. That's why we're having this discussion. And the board needs to make their decision tonight based upon physical considerations, the facts, the numbers. The option that will have the biggest impact to the bottom line. We have to see that savings coming into our budget with the goal of stabilizing this district in order to get off the financial watch list as soon as possible. Yes, there's an inherent risk in what the state may do, those what-ifs. But you know, we've been there, we did the what-if, We have 4 schools, and now we gotta say goodbye to one of them. It's hard, it's tough. And I'm telling you, we cannot base this decision on any emotional tie, any emotional bias. Take the emotion out of it, use the logic. Don't base your decision on any personal agenda that you may have. Don't base it on the what ifs. You need to base it on the logic, sound logic. This decision will impact us all. We're all Lincoln Way. We're going to pull together as a community, the Lincoln Way community, whatever our decision will be tonight. Our children, my child, your children will continue to receive the highest quality education here at Lincoln Way, regardless of the outcome of this decision and whichever school they attend. Tim Conway gave you his word tonight that our staff will be prepared to educate them. Many of you may not be familiar with the alma mater. But the alma mater begins, Lincoln Way, ever true, let us pledge our heart to you. It doesn't say Lincoln Way Central, Lincoln Way North, Lincoln Way East, Lincoln Way West. It's Lincoln Way. So I urge you to support us all in this decision, and I urge my board to make a financial decision that's going to be best for students. Look at the numbers that's going to balance the schools the best, that's going to have the biggest impact on the budget.
I have a question about some of the life safety expenses. Dr. Salomon, you can answer this. I think people in the community understand Central could never be completely shut for a couple of reasons. Number one, the district office and the IT department and the transition house for children with special needs. Those things are all here. If we were to move those things out and completely shut Central, if we ever were to have to reopen Central, there would be massive costs at that point to bring that building, as with any other building, up to code for 2015. So I think it's pretty well established. Everybody understands we cannot completely close Central. So my question on some of the life safety costs as they relate to Central, because they're very similar between Central and East. If we have things like the transition house here, if we have the IT department here, will we still be having to spend most, if not all, of that money anyway?
Yes. Again, I apologize, sorry. Yes, Mr. McFadden, if we keep any programs here, then we are required by school code to maintain the annual inspections by the ROE and keep the building up to the standards that meet those inspections, which means that any life safety issues or anything else would have to be addressed.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
I have a couple comments. The one thing I know we've discussed and we've been discussing all summer long, and you bring up the life safety. In essence, if we're going to maintain this building in any capacity, as was just said, that life safety dollars have to be spent anyway on whatever building we close. We have to keep them safe for our kids, as if the kids were in the building, even if it's closed. Is that correct, Dr. Tinley?
Correct.
Okay. So, I think the one thing that's been reiterated over and over again is, obviously the problems that we have here. I think the one thing we have to look at is Dr. Johnson brings up some very good points that, we need to, I've said this over and over, we need to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. Our hope goes on eternal, but it's not going to pay the bills. We need to prepare. And doing that, not knowing exactly what the state's going to do, I think it's a little premature to do 2 schools. But I think we need to be prepared that may be in our future. And we need to make sure that everyone understands, and I think you heard me make the caveat to the first motion when we decided on the attendance boundaries, that we need to review this annually. I'll be honest with you, we're going to be looking at it every month with what the state's doing. When those things change, it can change our financial picture, just like your own financial pictures with your budgets at home. As things come in and out, you have to adjust. You have to adjust your cost of living. The reality is we have less kids coming into the district. We also have another factor that a lot of people don't realize. We've heard a lot of people talk about the fact they're staying in their homes longer. Well, that actually affects us as a school district, because normally what happens is somebody moves into a house in Lenox or Frankfurt Square or one of these other, towns, and they buy a small starter home. Well, what's happened is the economy's taken a dive, and people aren't moving out of that starter home and letting a young family come in with new kids to bring new kids into the district. A lot of people are staying longer in their homes, and it does affect how this district has to operate, how we have to set our budgets, how we have to staff, how we have to set our facilities up. And we need to take action today with the thought in mind that, you know what, this is really the phase one, and hopefully the only phase we have to do to get us back on course financially, to maintain the excellence that is Lincoln Way, and to keep the school moving forward. At this point, my feeling is, as hard as it is for me to say, I think we need to maintain the two biggest schools in the district to make sure that we have the options.
With respect to central option C, is there any additional discussion?
I'm going to have some comments, but I'm going to hold on to them for later.
With respect to central option C, do we have a motion?
I would make a motion to accept central option C, closing of central. Second.
Additional comment?
I think it's true that it does create less disruption. There is arguably additional mentioned, along with life safety, are still going to have to be maintained, because unless you sell the building, the roof needs to be replaced. The roof needs to be replaced or repaired. I guess a little of the challenge I have, probably the minor challenge I would have with this option, is some of the logistics of moving students around the district in this one, because when I look at it, I see a lot of students from the New Lenox-Martino group. They're going to be driven past Central to get to East, because Central won't be there anymore. I see students from Mokina being driven past East to get to North, at the same time that we're trying to bus Frankfurt students over to East. I understand that the transportation problem really is no more complicated than what we have right now, but that just seems to fly in the face of logic to me a little bit. Again, my bigger concern, and I know there was no support for a two-school option, and I understand your opinion with this, but I also realize that you're hoping in the state, and yet that's exactly what we've been blamed for as a district, okay, is hoping in the state. Given that there's, we're not going to have that two-school option right now, I think it's important for us to have that bigger school available should we need it in the future. If we're not ready to take it now, I think it needs to be available in the future. And so I really worry about this option.
And I just completely struggle with the, just in case, what if we need it, or what if that, and that's exactly what we did 10 years back. I respectfully disagree.
One thing I'd just like to bring up, and I understand everybody's very emotional about this, and I know Kevin said it. Normally what this is we have our board meetings and we have the public comment, and it's not that we don't want you involved, but really we need to come up here and take your thoughts, because we've listened to all of you throughout the summer and throughout our tenure on this board. We really need to, if you could just allow us to have this discussion frank and open, and you're really going to see there are some very different opinions on this board. And we really just, it'll make things go smoother if we just have the opportunity to discuss it amongst ourselves, and it would be really appreciated. Thank you.
I need clarification on the programs that would be remaining at Central and what constitutes meeting those life safety items completed.
The life safety items on the list will certainly be completed. And the programs remaining at Central, as long as we do the annual walk, we keep up with the life safety expenditures. Certainly if our IT hub stays in the administration in the front wing, that's the use of smaller chillers. The expense or the loss there would not be as great as if we were to move into different areas of the building that are on the larger chillers. The issue with coming up with the cost savings of that is both agencies we work with would want to shut the building completely down, then run those for days to get that rate of return. That as soon as you start to cool the big chillers, those savings are diminished. In terms of the life safety, certainly with administration staying here with us, continuing to do our annual checkups, with us continuing to do the needed maintenance, we will be in a position to move forward.
Any additional discussion? Oops, I'm sorry, Dr. Johnson.
I know folks are not a fan of the what ifs, but hoping that things would not get worse with the state of Illinois, hoping that the economy would turn around is what we have been doing. And it has been spending our reserves.
Right, it's glass half full versus glass half empty, right? I mean, 10 years ago, we were overly optimistic. I believe what I'm hearing people say is now it is more prudent to be overly conservative.
I would also like to just make mention that we do have parcels that I know that we will not get top-notch dollar for, but we can sell those and infuse our budget somewhat. There are other revenue streams that we need to look into in order to increase our revenue. You know, either we increase our revenue, cut our spending, and I think we can do more in both areas and not think about the what-ifs. And I have a terrible problem with looking at, because let's be obvious here, we have a couple of scenarios left. We're either going to close Central, West, or North at this point. I can't close a new building that is one of the lowest to operate.
Well, I think one of the things I think you have to look at too is above and beyond the larger buildings. There's an ebb and a flow there. When you talk about the larger buildings, they have a larger cost, but they're also more expensive to mothball. Where the newer schools are cheaper to run, but a lot cheaper to shutter. So I think those are things that we have to look at. We have to look at preparing and being that conservative voice and making sure that we have the capacity if we need to go to 2 down the road. And I think if you look at any one of our, we've said this over and over throughout the summer, if you go into one of our classrooms at any one of our 4 schools, the classrooms, if you took a picture of them and I threw all 4 of them in front, I doubt even an administrator could tell you which school they belong to, because they're all great schools. And the teachers and the things that we always try to keep these things equal. And I think when we look at the options, we have to look at the option that makes the schools the most equal that we can.